So Frost has been getting itty bitty buffs directly and indirectly because of cold status changes, to the point now where he can freeze and lock down an entire room from both his abilities, but also with huge help from a Sentinel weapon due to some of these cold changes. Now, frozen enemies will directly buff your weapon's crit damage, but also give you bonus armor per enemy frozen, which will be all of them because of the Verglass weapon on a Sentinel being a crowd control freezing machine, but also you will be gaining energy candy from killing frozen enemies, also full armor strip, also the new frozen arcane will give you 40% bonus strength and duration, which will then help the uptime of maybe some subsumed abilities like Roar or Zata's Whisper. That's what you're seeing in this footage. Basically, it's Frost and a Verglass freezing big groups of enemies, which I'm then killing with blast damage and Zata's Whisper, and it is absolutely awesome. And I know I said this yesterday on my Ember video, but Frost is in a really good spot right now. The old school Fire and Cold Warframes are solid choices. That just leaves us with Trinity, Nyx, Banshee, Atlas, Zaku, and maybe a few others that still need buffs, right? So what changed? I'm not even going to talk about Limbo. So what changed with Frost? Because he did get some slight, and I mean very slight changes with the Jade Shadows update. He got a new passive called Fortifying Freeze, so his cold status effects now have double the duration than before, so longer freezes, and he gains 50 armor for each enemy within 15 meters that is affected with a cold status effect, which is pretty much every enemy because you're Frost. Now, I've had bonus armor of up to 1,000 at times due to the sheer enemy density on Steel Path, so it's a really nice passive. Ignore that, you heard nothing. His freeze ability has its AoE doubled. It now needs cold stacks to fully freeze, and the tooltip will say freeze duration instead of just duration, so minor changes to his first ability. His Ice Wave has had the duration renamed as well to freeze duration, and its augment will now leave a trail of frost for 12 seconds and stack cold status effects per second for each enemy that walks onto it. Again, minor changes. His Snow Globe, however, will now allow you to shoot into it from the outside, which is a huge change. It's one the community has been asking for years. So it can no longer block enemies. I guess if someone wants to troll you and pop a globe down in front of you, you can now just shoot the enemies anyway. It also applies a cold status effect every 3 seconds to enemies inside it, and it will instantly freeze enemies that are too close to it when you cast it, which it kind of did already. Now, when it explodes, it will deal damage, but it will also apply 3 stacks of cold status effects to enemies that explosion hits. His fourth ability, Avalanche, will now add cold status effects instead of just freezing enemies outright, and it's had its duration name changed to freeze duration as well. So you can see that maybe DE want to play more heavily on the idea that Frost will just keep freezing enemies into blocks of ice, maybe do away with that old mentality of Frost just being good for his globe. Now he's about stripping arm off, freezing enemies in place, which will then allow him to do more damage to those frozen enemies. Which is fine. He can already benefit in a huge way from this due to augments Biting Frost that will increase your crit chance and crit damage, but also Icy Avalanche, which will give your Frost Overguard. But they've also made some changes to cold status effects and how they work. Now at 10 stacks of cold on an enemy, it will become frozen for 3 seconds. This pretty much means that you have fully controlled it and it has turned into a target dummy for those 3 seconds. These enemies will then take double the crit damage that they would have before this update when they are frozen until they become unfrozen, which at that stage they will still keep 3 stacks of cold status, which means it will be easier to get them right back up to 10 and freeze them. That's if they're not already dead. Chances are if you frozen them, they died within seconds. Now this is my Frost build that I've used for this footage, the entire setup from Frost to weapon to Sentinel and its weapon. I have subsumed his first ability off in place of Zata's Whisper, but you can use Roar, you can use Nourish or a grouping mechanic, whatever you want. It's your frame, your game, have fun. Brief Respite is on my Frost for shield regen or shield gate. Sure-footed so that I don't fall over. Equilibrium because I'll be getting health and energy orbs from Sentinel and from frozen enemies when they die. Biting Frost is for crit chance and crit damage on frozen enemies. Umbral Intensify for power strength. Overextended for range. Icy Avalanche to give my Frost Overguard. Blind Rage for strength. Adaptation for resistance. And Archon Flow for energy orbs from killing frozen enemies. Now this has got a 10-second cooldown, but honestly it works incredibly well, especially with blast damage blowing up several enemies in one go, because of the sheer amount of frozen enemies you are about to see in your mission. Now, I also wanted to try Arcane Ice Storm, which is a new arcane from the current clan event on top of what I was already using, which was Molt Augmented. Now, Arcane Ice Storm will give me 40% bonus power strength and 40% duration when my Warframe or my weapon will proc a cold status effect. This doesn't work with Sentinels or Sentinel weapons, and in fact, Sentinels spreading cold status effects will block this from activating. So while it is a good arcane, having cold procs already on a target means that you can't stack this efficiently, which means I struggle to get the maximum amount of strength and duration out of this. Again, it's okay, but a different arcane might be a better option. Then we have my Tenet Glaxion, which is modded for crit, blast, and it has a magnetic progenitor. Progenitor, and with punch through for extra beams like linking more targets. I'm also using primary frostbite as the arcane on my Glaxion, which will have 100% uptime, but you can use whatever arcane you want. This just works really well with frost because it activates off of those cold status procs. This will give me 100% bonus crit damage and 90% bonus multi-shot at 40 stacks. And the reason that you will have 100% uptime on this is because of frost, the Glaxion, and the Verglass on your Sentinel, all stacking cold status effects in large areas. So you will hit 40 stacks in seconds, okay? Magnetic, by the way, also got some changes with this update. It now deals more damage to nullifiers, and it deals bonus damage to enemies with overguard. So it is a solid choice to go up against Eximus units. When it breaks their shield or their overguard, it will also zap them with electric damage. So a magnetic Glaxion as a progenitor is an awesome choice. So now the overkill part of this setup, which is your Sentinel of choice, whichever one you want, with the Verglass weapon and Shivering Contagion. Like I said, you can bring whatever Sentinel you want. If you want to bring the Nautilus so that you can group up enemies, go for it. If you want to bring the Riga so that you can have, I guess, his zapping potential on top of Archon Stretch for energy regen. Again, the Sentinel doesn't really matter, but using Duplex Bond on your Sentinel of choice will cause 3 clones to fly around, freezing enemies with their Verglass and just speeding up that lockdown potential. Now, you're going to want to mod your Verglass for fire rate, for punch through, corrosive, and shivering contagion, and it will have it priming enemies for more than one status effect, but more importantly, it's going to freeze big chunks of enemies, which will then cause them to take increased crit damage. They will then trigger your arcanes, and simply, like I said, just lock down entire rooms. Having your frost then strip those enemies of their defenses is just the icing on the cake. But that is my current frost after the Jade Shadows update. He is, like I said at the start of the video, incredibly good right now, which he already was before Jade Shadows, but these cold changes and the effectiveness of the new arcanes, while also spreading cold status, has just been boosted a little bit with this update. Let me know what you think of frost with these changes and the cold changes as well. Have a great day, have a great weekend, and as always, thanks for watching.